So in this level, Matt comes to the Fragme Industries warehouse where he's here to find an old friend of his by the name of Captain Carpenter. These guys here, the Sokum Commandos, have taken over, and Matt needs to try and stop them so he can rescue his friend. I'm going to go back here. These guys are pretty tough at this point, so I'm going to go back here and grab this upgrade. That came out of this little pot on the ground here. This is called the Master Shield. It comes from Matt's friend, Master Chef, from the Crown of Light series of video games. And so after Matt gets this, he's basically invincible for a little bit. He can sort of walk around and do as he pleases with these guys for about 30 seconds. The Sokum Commandos, you notice that they are using squirt guns as opposed to regular weaponry. These are guys from a game that Matt made called Sokum, where the enemies essentially use water guns as opposed to real guns in an attempt to make a sort of a non-violent, less traditional video game. It was a complete flop for Marathon Software and is sort of a dark spot in Matt's history. So as we progress through the game, we get to meet some sort of enemies, a lot of different enemies from Matt's past. This one in particular here that we meet is from one of Matt's first-person shooter titles. And these are the Secret Soldiers of the Wafer Thin. The interesting thing about the Wafer Thins is obviously they're traditional 2D in a sort of a 3D world. So they make it really difficult for Matt to do anything to him if they happen to turn on his side. And basically because of that and because they didn't have melee attacks back in the old days in games like that, they become essentially invincible. We'll fight a couple of Sokum Commandos here, and then we'll get back to meeting the Wafer Thins. Grab this upgrade, again, the Master Shield, and Matt's buddy Master Chef. So you'll see that the Wafer Thins will turn on a side like this, and when that happens, Matt is basically ineffective against them, so they sort of have their own brand of cover. You'll notice too that we used classic 2D style animation to animate these guys and to make them look extremely realistic and extremely awesome. So and so you'll see that as you get into the later levels, as this is level 6, by the way, so you're a ways into the game, probably about 8 hours in by this point. So for instance, those guys and their sort of ability to turn on point, you got the Sokums, they're resistant to normal damage, you pretty much have to use the water guns against them if you want to stand a really good chance. And then we're also going to meet another type of enemy as we get a little further into this section right here. Of course, every video game, like I mentioned, needs to have a couple of things. There's some basic things that you have to have. One of those nowadays is Space Marines. So these are some of the Space Marines from Hazards of Hostility, a game that Matt did a little while back. As you'll notice, the Space Marines, well, you may not notice because I just keep killing them like crazy. They're actually resistant to normal weapon damage. And because of that, it's always better to pull one of their weapons and take one of their weapons from them and use it against them. Another tactic that's pretty effective with these guys using melees. You'll notice that there's a good variety of melee moves. I think we have 4 or 5 different, whole entirely different combinations per weapon. So each weapon that you get will either be, a single-handed weapon, a two-handed weapon, or a dual-wield weapon, and those will have different types of melee attacks associated with them. So I pretty much hose those guys. I'm going to go up here and I'm going to grab these sort of dual-wield submachine guns here, and we're going to get right into the next fight.